The Chinese government has officially lodged a complaint against Canada after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said this yesterday.
We will continue to work with China for advancing Canadian interests and Canadian producers. At the same time, we will remain absolutely committed to working with our allies to ensure that China's approach of coercive diplomacy, its arbitrary detention of 2 Canadian citizens alongside other citizens of other countries around the world is not viewed as a successful tactic by them. It has put a significant strain on Canada-China relations, and we will continue to highlight our concern for the Canadians detained, our concern for the protection of human rights in places like Hong Kong and Xinjiang province with the Uyghurs. We're going to continue to work with our fellow like-minded nations around the world to impress upon China that its approach to internal affairs and global affairs is not on a particularly productive path for itself or for all of us.
To help us understand exactly what this means for the Canada-China relationship, I'm joined now by Guy Saint-Jacques. He, of course, served as Canada's ambassador to China from 2012 to 2016. He's now a senior fellow at the University of Alberta's China Institute. Hi, Mr. Saint-Jacques. Great to see you as always.
Thank you for the invitation, Vashi.
First, a question of interpretation, if you don't mind. China says it has lodged solemn representations with Canada over what we just heard from the Prime Minister. Can you help us interpret that? What exactly does it mean?
Well, it's a kind of diplomatic protest, and we would have to know whether this was a true diplomatic note or whether it was a verbal protest. But in any case, of course, China wants to express its displeasure. And at the same time, I think it's consistent with its strategy to try to scare Canada and try to scare other countries that would dare to challenge China.
Let's talk a little bit about the most recent developments in the relationship, and let's start with what we heard from the Prime Minister there. Those comments were made on the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Minister Champagne, the Foreign Affairs Minister, also came out with some, I guess, stronger language than we're used to. What did you make of the comments from the federal government on that anniversary?
Well, I was quite encouraged to hear what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday, and I look forward to knowing more about the ongoing review of our engagement strategy with China. I think that when the Liberal government was elected back in 2015, there were high hopes to have a close relationship with China. There was hope also that we could launch eventually free trade negotiations. Of course, all started to go downhill when the Prime Minister went on his second visit to China in December 2017. And of course, the arrest of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig in December 2018 finally forced Ottawa to realize that they were dealing with a different China, a China that is a lot more assertive, authoritarian, and aggressive. And unfortunately, we have to brace ourselves because it won't improve, most likely, in as much as the extradition process of Mrs. Meng could last for many years. I think the only hope in the short term is that if there is a change in the U.S. administration, that we see a different attitude towards the case of Mrs. Meng. But otherwise, again, we have to expect that our 2 Canadians will spend a long time in China in jail.
There have been some very, very small improvements in the last few days, only insofar as consular access was provided to Mr. Kovrig, Mr. Spavor, and we learned just this afternoon also to Robert Schellenberg. It appears they were given some sort of consular access after months of not having it. What do you read anything into that?
Well, I think that this is deplorable on the part of China because under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations and the bilateral agreement on consular relations, they are supposed to give us access once a month. And the fact that we had to wait for 9 months is totally unacceptable. The explanation at the outset was that because of the COVID, no visit would be allowed. But then China said that they got rid of the COVID-19. They allowed the Australians to have virtual access to one of their citizens in the spring. So it's incomprehensible why Canada did not have this kind of access. And I don't see this as a concession. In fact, we should keep pressing China for continuing to give regular access to our citizens.
Is there, I guess, is there any sort of, you say it's not a concession, obviously, but you have dealt with, I'm thinking of the Garretts, for example. Did you ever come across any issues like this, to this degree, that we've seen over the last number of months?
No, and in fact, I wonder if it's just another example of China trying to be mean with Canada. In fact, again, we should, in fact, lodge protests with the UN about this, and any time that China does not abide by its international obligations, and let's hope that they don't do anything further to complicate access to them.
We've spoken frequently, Mr. Saint-Jacques, about the posture of the federal government, and our viewers are well familiar with some of the criticism, in particular leveled from the opposition towards the government about the posture they've taken. We listened to that clip from the Prime Minister. I wanted to play a quick clip from last week from Canada's ambassador to the UN, Bob Rae. He was speaking about China and about Syria and some of the defense that their representatives have mounted or had mounted at the UN at that forum, arguing that countries like ours have, not a stellar record when it comes to human rights, that we have our own problems to deal with as well, and therefore our right to criticize their human rights track record is diminished. And that's a bit of a paraphrase, but I want to play for our audience what Mr. Rae said, and then get your take on it as well.
My own Prime Minister, speaking from the dais up there, was very, very clear when he said Canada cannot claim that our past has been one of no injustice towards Indigenous people. In fact, quite the opposite. He accepted responsibility. We've established commissions of accountability. We've established commissions of truth and reconciliation. Where are the commissions of truth and reconciliation in China? Where are the commissions of truth and reconciliation in Syria?
So, Mr. Saint-Jacques, I saw this first tweeted from Liberal MPs' accounts, and it stuck out to me. We have not heard, I don't think, a Canadian official express those sentiments in that way, in that pointed of a way. And I'm wondering what you make of it, and if you think it sort of is a hint of what we can expect going forward, like if the posture of the federal government might slowly be changing from what it has been over the past few years.
Well, I would certainly hope so. This was a very powerful statement by Ambassador Rae. I congratulated him on that. And in fact, I think the tone that we have to take going forward, we have to be a lot firmer when we are faced with comments from Chinese officials that we feel are not appropriate. And of course, I suspect that the ongoing review of the strategy will include working more closely with allies to try to develop common approaches and strategies towards China. It should be based on the defense of our values like freedom of speech, freedom of religion. But I think all this are very positive developments.
Quickly, on the flip side, there has been some resistance to becoming too pointed in the manner we just heard, because, of course, of the possible negative impacts on Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, for example. How do you take that into account, I guess?
Well, I think that, in fact, there's not much more that they can do to penalize Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. In fact, what we remains to be known is when their trial will formally start, and of course, then it will become very difficult to extract them from China, because we will be told that we cannot ask China to interfere into a judicial process. So, unfortunately, they could be in jail for a long time.
Okay, unfortunately is right. Thank you, Mr. Saint-Jacques. I appreciate your time and insights as always.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.